Hello everybody, thanks for joining me today. I'm Jackie and I create mosaics using sea glass. And today I'm going to talk to you about my sea glass mosaic flower bed, part 3. So this is my third video in a series of videos about the process that I use for taking a mosaic from the very beginning to the very end. And what I'm intending to do here is to show you where I'm at each week in the process and to give you some of the tips and tricks that I use in creating a sea glass mosaic. So in my first week, I showed you all about getting started and everything you needed to do to get yourself going. And then last week, I showed you a bit about starting to build the design and integrating some of the green sea glass in with the brown sea glass in the bottom of the flower bed. And this week, I'm going to get started on making flowers because it's a flower bed, we need flowers. So I'll show you everything that you need to know to get started in that process. Keeping in mind that when you're doing a flower bed, this is a design that's very free-flowing and I'm sort of creating it and deciding what I'm doing as I go. And when you're making flowers, the flowers are all different because you're using different types of sea glass. And in my mind, I'm thinking of flowers as being very fanciful. They're not representing a real flower. Like some of them look like daisies, some of them might look like tulips. They might look like something different to you depending on what type of flowers you like and what type of flowers you have where you live. But in my mind, I'm just working with the pieces of sea glass that I have and I'm trying to put together fancy little designs with them. So let's get started and I'll show you that process. So this is where I am on my flower bed since last week. If you remember last week I had the brown started and since then I've started coming up with some of the green strands of grass, the grass that's growing up from the bottom of the flower bed. And I'm going to continue with that. I haven't finished that section, but I am going to by the end of it, I'm still going to have more strips and strands of grass. You'll see that as I go. And then there's going to be the brown there. And what's next to come, I know I'm going to have a bunch of flowers. And then the background and the top part is going to be all filled in with white. So I'll probably leave the white till the end because I know that that's going to fill everything in. So the first thing that I'm going to do with putting my flowers is I want to have a bit of a plan of where the flowers are going to be. So I'm going to do the centers. And I know I have these 3 really cool shells that I'm going to have the centers of some flowers. So I think I'll place those 3 around. And I want those kind of over on this side. And I've got this one really cool shell that I thought would be neat for the center of a flower, and I'm going to put that down here. So I'm going to have one big flower there. This is a really cool stone that's kind of white and gray that I'd like to use. So I might do maybe 3 little flowers in here. Maybe I'll put one more here. I'm not going to glue them on until I get the flower laid out, just because I might change the exact center of where it's going to be. But just to say, this is roughly how many flowers I'd like to have. And then what I'm going to do is decide those are the flower centers. So what am I going to put around them? One of the most frequently asked questions I get is, what do you use for glue? This is my favorite. It is clear silicone. It's like a kitchen and bath adhesive caulk. You'll get it at the hardware store. Any clear silicone that you can find will do. Just be sure that it says clear. It either says clear or dries clear on the label. So let's just start. I'd like to start over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find some green petals. I find there's so many round or triangular, like there's so many triangular pieces of sea glass that I find they lend themselves really well to creating flowers. I have a bunch of blue mussel shells, and these are like pieces of mussel shell that kind of get ground the same way sea glass gets ground in the surf. And those I find can add some real interest when you're doing these types of I call them fanciful flowers. Keeping in mind that these three centers are the same, so I think I'll make the flowers similar. So I kind of like those. Those are one of the things to keep in mind when you're making flowers like this, or in my mind, I don't think that they have to be tight. Like when I'm filling in a section like this, I like to have my pieces fitting fairly nicely and fairly close. Whereas when I'm making a flower, I kind of want it to look open and kind of airy. So I don't necessarily want the pieces snug up against one another. So I'm giving them some room to breathe. Another thing that I was thinking I might do here is I might create a few little flowers that are kind of like tulips. You know, get some neat pieces of sea glass. This is kind of a funky piece of brown. It might look neat with some things like that. A few little green leaves on either side. If I put it up here maybe where it's going to be all surrounded by white. This one here is kind of neat as well. A blue mussel shell, and I put a couple of green triangles beside it that kind of look like leaves. I think I'll work that into the design as I'm going as well. There's a piece of sea glass that looks just like a leaf. Might go neat over here. So I'm kind of at a stage here where I can be fairly slow in the way that I work, because I'm trying to decide how I want my flowers to go, and sometimes I could play for a long time and never glue a piece on. But I have decided in this piece right here, or this flower right here, I think I'd like to have the petals standing on end. Maybe I'll stand up a bunch of brown going around and then some green, alternate it with some green that stand on end. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to start gluing some on. I find when I'm gluing pieces on edge like this, they can sometimes be a bit messier than when you're gluing them flat, because when you glue them flat, you can hide all the glue underneath the piece of sea glass. Whereas if you don't put enough glue on when you have these going up on their side like this, they are going to fall down. Keep in mind that I'm using glue that goes on white, but it dries clear, so you won't be able to see that white glue once it's dried. But where it's white, it makes it easy at this stage to clean up some of the messy bits. Now I'm going to find some green ones and put them on Sometimes edge. When I'm doing a flower like this, I'll try to find a bunch of pieces that are approximately the same size. So if I was going to put 5 green ones around, I would find 5 green that are approximately the same size. But it doesn't matter if they're not, because it just makes the flower more interesting. If they were all really even, to me the flower would be kind of boring, because I kind of like things a bit asymmetrical. So if you look really close, you can see what that flower is starting to look like. So I've decided to put 3 flowers in this section here. I've got this one, and this one. And they're all a little bit different, with different colors that are emphasized in each flower, and that's fine. There's this rock that I'm using for the center of this flower is kind of cool. It's flat and kind of sandy, kind of oval in shape, so it'll make for an interesting flower. So with that one, I think I'm going to put something on top of it, sort of as a little, that's a cool piece there, just to make the center of the flower a little bit more interesting. So sometimes what I'll do when I'm trying to make a flower, I'll find some sea glass pieces that are similar in size and shape. So here I've got a number of triangles green triangles, and I'm thinking I'm going to put them around here to make this flower. And then I think what I'll do is put some spokes around there as well. So here I found 6 triangles in brown that I think would be good in here. So I'm just going to put them like this for now. And then when I go to glue them on, I'll decide. I might decide that I want them on edge, or I might leave them like this. You'll notice that I haven't put stems on any of these flowers yet. I'm going to wait until I get my flowers all laid out, and then I'll decide. So I've got 3 flowers there, 3 there. Now in this one, I have this one flower here, but I want to build one right here. These stones are kind of pretty. I have 3 similar shaped stones that might start it. Maybe I'll leave that there for now and see how that goes. Now here I think what I'd like to do is put some brown. So I'd need 6 of those little browns to stand on end there. So the other thing I want to do is fill in this long stem, because that's kind of another plant coming up from the garden. It's not actually the stem of any of the flowers. I'll do the stems of the flowers separate from this, but they'll be skinnier because this is kind of a plant all in its own. I don't want to get too many flowers because I want a lot of white in the background, because that's really what's going to make it come alive. I do want to put a bit of a flower up here in white, and I want to put one here in white as well with the blue in the center. So I can wait until I get to the white sections to do that. So I'm at the point now where I think I'll just continue on from here and try to get these flowers all sorted. Once I've made a decision about how many flowers I'm going to have and where they're going to be for sure, I'll glue them on before I do the stems. And then I'll do some skinny stems attaching all the flowers to the rest of the garden. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to post them, and I will address them in my video next week. And I hope that this is really inspiring you to make some flowers in your own sea glass mosaics. Thanks very much for joining me today, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.